Hello to the viewers at home. My name is Ryan Lima, and I'm here with Del Lee, who will also be asking the questions in this interview, and our interviewee, Ian Dardik, who graduated from Amity in 2010 and is currently a graduate student at Northeastern University in Boston. So, Ian, we're very happy that you're here with us today and have been able to take time out of your day to do this interview. So, thank you.
Very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get started with the first question. What is your career field and how long have you been working in this field?
So it's an interesting question because right now I'm a grad student, as you mentioned, at Northeastern, and I'm in the Master's of Computer Science program. And my goal is to eventually apply to a PhD program in the fall, but I've only been in grad school for a single semester. I was a software engineer for almost 6 years, and that's, I guess you could say, been my primary career since it was, almost 6 years.
Okay, so when you were in Amity High School, what were your career goals? Like when you were young, what was your goal?
When I was in high school, I didn't really have any career goals per se. Hopefully that's not the wrong answer, but I didn't have any goals at the time. I had a vague idea that maybe I wanted to do research because my father's a scientist, and I thought maybe eventually I wanted to. But at the time in high school, I didn't really have any specific goals.
So, when you were in high school, did any specific subject or activity that you did sort of influence the career field that you're trying to get into?
Yes, very much. So when I was a junior, I took the computer science course. It was 2 semesters, and I loved it. I love video games when I was in high school, and to me, being able to program was kind of like um, doing a video game. And I built a couple games. I remember I built Space Invaders was one of the things I did, and I loved it. I like there's a little bit of instant gratification you get because you can do the work, you can check it, and it gets addicting. It's a lot of fun. So I'd say that, and eventually I became a math major, and I'd say that a big influence for that was calculus. I was not a very good math student for a very long time. Throughout elementary school, my freshman through junior year, I was not a very good math student. Junior year, is Mr. Beretta around? He was I love Mr. Beretta. He taught me computer science. He gave me a C- in pre-calc my junior year. It wasn't until my senior year when I took calculus with Ms. Chang, who I also loved, where I started to realize I liked math a lot. So, things changed a lot in college when I became a math major.
So, would you say, I know that you just mentioned some of the teachers there. Would you say that they had like an impact, or are there any other teachers within the high school that you think had an impact to where you're going today?
Yeah, definitely Mr. Beretta and Mrs. Chang were great influences. Mrs. Chang, honestly, part of the thing was she was such an awesome teacher. She made the subject fun, and as we were talking about right before we started recording, that's always very important. If the teacher can engage the students, then that'll help you get interested and learn the subject more. So.
Okay, so what made you decide to become a software engineer?
Yeah, I love computer science from the start. When I took it my junior year, senior year, and throughout college, I really liked it. I did think about research a little bit in college, but it wasn't exactly obvious to me how to get into research, and I didn't think about it too much. So as a computer science student, the track was just become a software engineer. So it kind of occurred to me halfway through my senior year, around the wintertime, that I should probably interview for jobs. So, I started looking for jobs, and I got one at a company where some of my friends worked from the year above me, and they loved it. And yeah, that's how I became a software engineer.
So where did you go to prepare for this job? Was there any like college or professional school that like have a lot of training involves computer science stuff?
Yeah, definitely. College. I went to University of Connecticut, and I was a computer science major. Had a great time with it. I know a lot of people who managed to become software engineers without majoring in computer science, you can definitely do it. But my route was I majored in computer science, and it definitely helped. You know, it helped me. The job was not easy from the start, and I'm sure that it would have been possible to do if I just studied a lot and then maybe I did a boot camp. I have friends who majored in other things, and they did a software engineering boot camp, but it definitely helped, right? It gives you more of a theoretical background and definitely some hands-on experience. So majoring in computer science definitely helped with that.
So, what would you say sort of an average day within your job looks like?
Let's see. So I'll tell you real quickly. Right now, as a grad student, average day is I wake up around 7:30, something like that, and I basically just study most of the day. I'm glued to my seat. This is a rough semester. I'm taking 2 courses, which I know doesn't sound like that much, but right now it's a lot, and also a research kind of class. So basically, I try to get a run in like a couple times a week and have fun ski on the weekends. But it's just studying, going to class all day. When I was a software engineer, it was get in the morning. So I'll tell you, my average day changed a lot. So I'll just tell you, I was a manager for my last 2 years at Faxis. I'll tell you about an average day as my job as a manager. I try to get in around 8 or maybe a little bit before 8 because most people will get in around 9. And what I liked about coming in early is I could get at least an hour of work done without anyone bothering me, asking me questions. At least my reports, because my reports had a lot of questions asked me. And then it's just an onslaught of meetings and questions. And, I liked meetings. I liked fielding questions. It was fun to interact with my team. But it was long day of meetings, and then probably around 5 or something like that, when people would leave, I could start to work on my own stuff again.
So then I know you mentioned meetings and things along those lines. What would you say are some of the best parts within that, and then some of the worst parts? And you mentioned being a manager as well.
Yeah, so there's lots of good and bad parts. So the great news about become a manager is you get to kind of define the direction of your team. It's a lot of fun because I was able to develop a lot of projects and hand them off to my reports. And now there was a lot of fun in that because it was very creative. It was a creative aspect of the job. I was able to say, I really think we could improve this part of the code base, devise the project. Maybe I would start to do some coding, maybe not. And then either way, hand it off to a report. And that's a lot of fun. There's, of course, it's not all creative because sometimes I would get things handed to me that I had to take care of. Maybe I would handle it or hand it off to a report. Maybe you could say a negative is there's a lot, positive and negative, a lot more responsibility. It's a lot of fun, but it was definitely something that didn't come easy. I remember kind of realizing how much responsibility you have because you have your reports that if they're going to come to you, and this is my first time being a manager, I hope I have the answers to the questions. I hope I don't give them projects that aren't fun. I hope I give them projects that are worthwhile, because if I give them a project and then all of a sudden my project manager tells me that this isn't worthwhile, this isn't worth our time, and I have to tell my report, listen, this project I just gave you, we're not going to use it. That's not fair to the report. So there is a lot of responsibility that I didn't think about before I became a manager. So it's a positive and a negative.
Okay, so you stated that your most challenging part is having like a lot of responsibility as a manager, right? So have you moved up the ladder or changed positions while you're doing a manager? Like, I know that you start to do it, but like, is there any opportunity to like moving up the ladder for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So definitely becoming a manager was a big step up the ladder for me, and that's it. I was a manager and I had 2 reports, so small team, pretty small team. That's as far as I got. I'd say part of the reason I left was because of not being able to move up farther. So actually, that's kind of worth talking about, because eventually I probably could have stayed on board, worked for my manager, and eventually moved up the ladder farther. Who knows how long that would have taken? And honestly, it would have been a lot of fun. I really liked my job a lot. But it would have taken a while, and I knew I would have loved to have my manager's job. That would have been one opportunity. Or I wanted to expand my team. You know, I really wanted more reports, because I had all these ideas, and I only had 2 reports. So that would have been another way you could say to kind of maybe not move up the ladder, but have the ladder grow underneath me. But one of the problems, of course, was I butt heads with my manager a lot. You know, he was a good guy, and I liked a lot of things about him, but we disagreed about a lot of things. And I'm not sure exactly how that would have affected whether I move up or didn't move up in the future, because at the end of the day, whether we liked each other or not, we had a very good working relationship. But I'd say I moved up once, became manager, and then 2 years later, I left. So I didn't move up any farther than that.
So like, what is your like future career plans?
That one I have a very clear-cut answer to. So right now I'm going to grad school, and I am going to apply to PhD programs in the fall. My goal is to become a scientist. You know, I first have to get into a PhD program. It's easier said than done. We'll see. Right now I'm in this research class, and it's really not a class. I'm just working with a professor and trying to do some research for him. We'll see if that can bear any fruit. If it does, it'll give me a leg up for applying to PhD programs. If I get into a PhD program, like I said, my goal is to become a scientist and do research. If I don't, then I won't be super upset necessarily, and I'll have to recalibrate my goals. I'll probably go back into the industry, and there's great opportunities as a software engineer, and I'll have to see what my goals are at that point.
How would you advise a high school student who right now wants to work in the field that you're in?
Wow, high school's it's been a long time since I've been in high school, so you're pretty far removed. I'd say if you want to become a software engineer and you already know that, your best bet is probably majoring in software engineering or something related. You could major in like data science or mathematics if you think you might want to be on the more theoretical side. But choosing a more technical major is probably what I would recommend. Even though it's a recommendation, but you don't have to. Be ready to be constantly learning, it's a very dynamic field, and I'd say, what is a little bit of advice I'd have, and this is really for anyone, maybe not just if you're in my field, but it's take a bunch of classes when you're in college. When I was in college, I took 6 classes, and I majored in comp sci and math. And initially I was a software engineer, so the math part wasn't exactly strictly necessary. But, I decided to go back to grad school, and you never know what you want to do later. So the more education you have, the better off you'll be. The more likely you are to be able to have lateral movement between different things you want to do. For example, I'm taking this machine learning class right now in grad school, and boy, it's incredibly tough. And if I just majored in computer science and not math too, I bet you I would have twice as tough of a time. So take a bunch of classes and try to soak up as much knowledge as you can. You never know what you want to do later.
So do you think that I know that you mentioned being able to learn quickly, especially in this field. Do you think that, what are 3 skills that you think high school students should be able to acquire on this journey to getting into this field?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my number 1 skill that I think is applicable to anyone. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not something that's really going to come easy, especially, it won't come in high school necessarily. And it's knowing how to work with failure. I'm a little bit obsessed with failure. Failure is something you're going to constantly encounter, especially if you're driven, right? If you're driven, you're going to try more and you're going to fail more because you're trying so many things. So honestly, knowing how to deal with failures is key because well, I already said why. It's key. You have to know how to get back on your feet, right? It's easy to beat yourself up, and it's easy to see the negatives, and it's important to self-assess and see what went wrong. But honestly, I think it's easier to self-assess than it is to not beat yourself up and get back up and have confidence. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's my number one thing, no matter what field you're in. And whenever I get a chance to talk to people or ask someone questions, that's my number one question: is how do you deal with failure? So that's my number one. And so besides the obvious ones, right? Leadership is important, right? Being humble is important. But one maybe less obvious one that I learned, skill that's important that I learned about, is balancing boldness and conservativeness. So I learned this as a manager, especially while butting heads with my manager. I was very bold. I wanted to take action. I wanted to change the code base. And as a result, what happened? Well, sometimes I would introduce bugs and we'd have a lot of crashes. And overall, the changes I made were good. Overall, we had a lot of cleanup and we got rid of big bugs and we sped the code base up. But if you took a look at all the different failures and all the different little issues I introduced into the code base, you could argue I could have been a little bit more conservative, and my manager certainly did. So my manager was all the way on the conservative side. I was all the way on the bold side. You want to be able to manage it, maybe somewhere in between is ideal. So of course, that's why it's good to have both me and my manager, is because between the two of us, between our discussions and our merging philosophies, you got a moderately stable piece of software, right? So that's one I never really thought about until I got into the industry. So I know I gave you two.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I'm the student who takes computer science classes right now in junior year, and then a lot of people who's near me kind of want to be like software manager like you, and then they're kind of thinking of like which language they should learn, because current language we're learning Java as a beginner, but there's like Python and then C and the C++, like which language they should like focus on to learn and then be ready for their career.
Oh wow, that's a great question. I'm going to say an impossible question to answer too. There's so many. Let's see. God, I'm going to go ahead and just give you kind of an answer that gives you an idea of what you could learn. You could go ahead and you could, yeah, it depends on your goals. That's going to be my answer. It depends on your goals. If you want to go ahead and learn some more theoretical style programming, so a programming language with a rich type system that teaches you about programming languages, you could learn something like Scheme or Racket or an ML style, like OCaml or something like that. Those are really cool languages. They are a functional paradigm, and it's not something you're used to seeing when you first start programming, especially when you do Java. And for me, I was a C++ engineer for like almost 6 years, which is an imperative language, which is like kind of like Java. It's an imperative language. It's not what you're used to. Functional is very weird, but it gets you into a very computer science like mindset. So if you want something kind of interesting and more theoretical, they're not completely theoretical, these languages, but that's what I would recommend. If you want something that is kind of quick and dirty, and you just want to go ahead and kind of learn language with a lot of power, Python. Python's a great language. It's not a fast language, but it's got a lot of power to it. It's very expressive with not a lot of characters. So I like that one. Data scientists love it. But my personal favorite, of course, is C++, since I've used it so much. And that's a great one if you want to be an engineer, especially because you have to understand what's going on under the hood. One of the toughest languages to learn. It's very esoteric. It took me 2 to 3 years just to learn, how to be slightly competent. So it's there's a big learning curve to it, But one of the things I love about it is you really learn what's going on under the hood. You have to learn about compiling and linking, and you have to learn about the memory management and pointers. You don't have to think about pointers too much in Java. You don't have to think about the memory management. You know, you have to think about the stack and the heap, and you know, all these are words you probably aren't familiar with. But if you learn about C++ and you want to be a good engineer, there it's important. So lots of good languages out there. It depends on your goals. My personal favorite is C++, but it's you know, I'm biased.
I think our current current main meta in high school is C++, so I think your advice will go.
Hey, Java's a good one too. I personally I had to do a little bit of Java again in college. It's been so long since I've written in Java, and I miss. There's a lot of things I actually didn't like about it. Coming back to it, but when I was in high school, I loved Java. That was my favorite language. And if you already know Java, I'd say run with it. You know, it might not even be worth it to have the learning curve of C++ when you can already do so much in Java. You know, if you can bang out some awesome projects and you can learn some more concepts. Like I remember I did a bunch of networking and stuff with Java on my own. And I really had a lot of fun with that in high school. So, you know, Java is a great language.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, I think we're good with the questions. Ian, we'd like to thank you for being able to take time out of your day to do this interview, and we really appreciate it.
No problem. It was a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully somewhere in my rambling answers, I was able to help you guys out.
Yeah, it was very thankful.
Excellent. Hey, best of luck, guys. It was good talking to you.